Good evening, and thank you for joining me on tonight's episode of Green Slate I. I'm Jan Kowalski, and we're brought to you by Green Slate I Incorporated. And Green Slate is dedicated to helping ex-offenders. They've got programs for re-entry, feeding the families of Inglewood, and they also have a community service program through the Circuit Court of Cook County. And the Green Slate's information, Green Slate can be reached at eteamsz.com/Dick Allen or Kirby Puckett or kpucketyouthcenter@gmail.com, and their phone number is 312-866-9748. And I'm Jan Kowalski, and tonight we're going to be talking about courtroom etiquette. And to help you remember my name, sorry. There we go. I'm Jan Kowalski. That's Kowalski. And I have a cute little mnemonic device that will help you remember my name. And I'm hoping it's going to show up on the screen. There it is. It's my little koala bear, and he's on skis because my name is Kowalski. Some people might say that it's Kawasaki, like the motorcycle, but it's really Kowalski, and I am 100% qualified. Back to me. Tonight we're going to be talking about courtroom etiquette. At some point in your career, you're going to have to appear in a courtroom. Whether you're a witness, whether you're a defendant, whether you're a plaintiff, whether you're represented by an attorney, whether you're appearing for a deposition, you still are going to have some basic understanding of courtroom etiquette. And to start off tonight, I wanted to talk about the appropriate clothing to wear for when you're in the courthouse. Now, it's very important that you follow the rules as to etiquette when you appear in the courtroom, either that or for your deposition. Because the courtroom is a world of rituals and formalities, and it's one of the most formal places you'll ever be, next to a church. Other than a church and a courtroom, they're both equally formal. You have to know and observe basic courtroom etiquette signals to the judge to show that you respect the legal process and you respect the judge's role as a representative of the rule of law, and that you're serious about your case or that the case that you're there for. Now, every judge runs his or her courtroom differently, but here I'm going to give you some general suggestions that will hopefully serve you well anytime you have to go before a judge, a court, or even appear for your deposition, whether you have an attorney or not. And again, this is a live call-in program, and I'm Jan Kowalski. You can reach me for your comments, questions, and concerns at 312-738-1060. Now, the first subject I want to talk about is clothing to wear to the courtroom. You should be neat. Your clothes should be clean. They should be pressed. You do not need a suit. Think something more like business casual. Take off your hat, take off your sunglasses. We don't want to treat people like school kids here, but if we do expect, if you come to court and you need to treat the court with appropriate respect and dignity, that's deserving the occasion. And let me give you some examples. In May of, I believe it was 2011, a lady was jailed when she went to court in the Circuit Court of Lake County for the 19th Judicial Circuit, and she had an offensive t-shirt on. Her t-shirt says, quote, "I have the blank and I make the rules." The judge held her in contempt of court for wearing this offensive t-shirt. This is in Waukegan, Illinois. Again, in Inkster, Michigan, a man was turned away from the courtroom because he was wearing cut-off jeans to court. And apparently this violated the local dress code in the State Court of Appeals in Michigan. And of course, he missed his court date and he was fined. Another example is a woman who also missed her court date because she didn't get into a courtroom in California, in Bakersfield, because she was wearing flip-flops. Additionally, in Ohio, a man was turned away from the courtroom when he wore a t-shirt bearing the character of Chucky and the words, quote, "Say goodbye to the killer." This is not appropriate courtroom attire, and judges are extremely strict about this. And let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example of a before and after picture here. Let's hope this is going to show up. There it is. I don't know if you, hopefully you can see this at home. On the one side we have the before picture, and on the other side we have the after picture. This is the same person, and this person's been given a makeover in anticipation of going to court. Notice that although the man continues to have tattoos, the mustache obscures them, and the high-collared shirt also obscures the tattoos on the neckline. So you feel free to display the tattoos. I don't want to get anybody to thinking that I'm against tattoos. But if you're going to court, I suggest that if you have tattoos that are prominently displayed, that you might want to consider wearing a long-sleeve shirt or a shirt with a collar. That's about appropriate clothing. Now let's move on to the conduct in the courtroom. Wait, let's see. There you go. Appropriate courtroom conduct. There we go, courtroom conduct. It's important when you go into the courthouse that you remove and don't bring into the courthouse your cell phone. Why? This tip should be obvious, and in some courthouses they don't even allow cell phones, but sadly some people need to be reminded, don't bring your cell phone into the courthouse. It's just not worth it unless you've got a very important pressing business engagement. And even then, perhaps you can reschedule your testimony around your business commitments. It's just not worth the aggravation to bring your cell phone into the courthouse. For instance, and this was a while ago, in March 2005, there was a judge in Niagara Falls City Court in Niagara Falls, New York. And during his court call, his name is Judge Robert M. Restrano. During his court call, and he was presiding over a domestic violence call. One morning in his courthouse, apparently in March of 2005, a cell phone rang in this judge's courtroom. And what he proceeded to do when nobody claimed responsibility for this errant cell phone ringing, he decided to take 46 people into custody because this cell phone rang in his courtroom. Although the judge was later disciplined by the state judicial board for this conduct, it nonetheless underscores the importance of turning off your cell phone, or more importantly, don't even bring it into the courthouse, then it's not an issue. A similar issue relating to cell phones is also relating to the use of cameras. Courts nowadays do frown upon the use of cell phones, notwithstanding the craze for selfies and internet and mobile devices. Courts still frown upon the use of photographic devices in the courthouse. And matter of fact, there are a lot of statutes that prohibit this. The Illinois Supreme Court has been undertaking studies to determine whether to allow cameras in the courthouse, but until then, do not take a photograph in the courthouse. Matter of fact, a man in the United Kingdom happened to send a text message when he was in the courthouse on his phone. It wasn't even a photograph, it was a text message. He was put into custody for 2 months because they considered the text message a photograph. So don't even risk it with the conduct of taking your cell phone into the courthouse. It's just not worth it. Additional conduct that we have to, and again, this is a live call-in program, and I'm Jan Kowalski. I'm here on behalf of Green Slate I, and you can call me. This is a live interactive program with your comments, questions, and concerns by calling the number on your screen. The other part of appearing in the courthouse is respect. You need to show the judge that you are respectful. And the way to do this is stand when the judge enters a courtroom. Some judges may have relaxed this and no longer require people to stand, but it doesn't hurt if you stand to acknowledge the judge's presence when he or she takes the bench and he or she leaves the bench. When and if your case is called and you're called upon to speak to the judge, always refer to the judge as Your Honor. And most importantly, do not ever talk over the judge, ever. Once the judge starts opening his or her mouth to speak, zip it. That's my best advice to anyone, because judges do not want to strain to be heard over someone else. When the judge speaks, please just silence yourself. Don't ever talk over the judge. Most judges believe that this is a sign of deep respect for the judge and also the force of law if the event that you're trying to cut them off. It's important that you be quiet and do not interrupt and let them finish their thought. And you might even ask permission to address the court. Now, if you're the kind of person that tends to interrupt other people when they speak, you need to practice better listening skills before your court appearance. And again, this is Jan Kowalski, and I'm here for Green Slate I, and this is a live interactive program. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air. Thanks for calling in.
Abogado, yo soy, me llamo Jose Jimenez.
Hola, Jose. How can I help you?
My English is pretty, not too bad, but I want to know what happens if I go to court with all those tattoos you were saying. Do I need to cover them up on my hands too?
Yes, that would be a great idea. You can always keep your hands in front of you so that just do not display the tattoos prominently on your hands. Courts are concerned. I don't know if there's gang affiliations.
Well, no, I left those gangs a long time ago, so I don't belong to gangs anymore.
All right, if you were my client, I would advise you to ask your girlfriend, wife, or significant other for some makeup or concealer. But thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. You're so informative.
Good luck to you.
Good.
And thank you for calling in again. This is a live interactive program. Feel free to call in with your comments, questions, and concerns. The next topic I wanted to address was the language that you use. There, I'm trying. The language that's used in the courtroom. And it's important that you keep your voice up and watch your language. Well, let's see if we can see this a little better. What happened to Zoom 2? There we go, the dictionary. Remember, there is a court reporter or there is a listening device that's present in the courtroom. And although it cannot record nonverbal gestures, like nodding or pointing, you need to use your words. And do not use curse words, swear words. Try to avoid these at all costs. You need to make your point with words other than curses, cusses, or swear words. Even though you might normally use them in your normal speaking, try to avoid these if at all possible when you're in the courtroom. Don't use slang, cursing, accusations, or sarcasm. Don't use rude words or gestures to the judge or your opponent, or don't signal. If you do, this will signal that you don't have much of a legal case and you'd rather just bluster. Now, the judge's job isn't to rule on your character or the other side's character or to make them feel shame. The judge's job is to decide the facts given the law. Now, credibility is in the details. The more facts that you can present and the more reasonable you are, the more likely that you'll have the judge's full, unvarnished attention. Now, you might want to consider hiring a lawyer to do the talking for you if you're concerned about how your speech before the bench. But you can hire an attorney, believe it or not, for just one courtroom appearance. Nowadays, we've got unbundling of legal services, and there are attorneys out there that were more than willing to go to court just one time for that one case, even if it's just a traffic matter, especially if you're concerned about the words that you use when addressing the court. Now, some attorneys might tell you don't be emotional. I disagree. I think the court needs to know that this is important to you and that this is your life, and you need to convey a sense of emotion to the court. This is not just abstract facts applied to law. This is your life and your involvement in it, and you need to convey that to the court. But you don't have to talk like a lawyer. You don't have to use fancy words like thenceforth and thereafter or res ipsa loquitur. Just tell it like it is. The truth will set you free. Now, I have to caution you, although that you're paying particular attention to the words you're using, you also need to be conscious of your body language. There's nonverbal communication that a lot of people do in the courtroom that I see all the time. One of these is, for instance, clicking of a pen. And here I happen to have a pen here. I have seen attorneys and litigants just repeatedly click the pen. And I don't know if the microphone's picking that up, but at a certain point, this gets to be really annoying, the little click, click, click that you hear all the time. I've also seen litigants in the court, when the other person is talking, do disrespectful gestures and comments. For instance, they might cross their arms and do, huh. Or they might do eye rolling, they might make a nasty face, or other disrespectful behavior. Don't do it. I have seen the court admonish a client for doing this, when otherwise she was winning because this other side's story was so ludicrous. Because my client started making faces, the judge got upset and literally directed her to sit down. So please pay particular attention to the nonverbal communication that you're giving to the court, whether it's by virtue of how you're standing, slouching, the noises that you're making, the way your arms are folded across your chest. Be very conscious of this, because this can convey more than words. And again, you're listening to Green Slate I, and I'm Jan Kowalski, and tonight we're talking about courtroom etiquette. And this is a live interactive show, and feel free to call in at 312-738-1060. I also wanted to talk about your tone. By tone, I don't mean musical tone. I mean the tone that you're addressing the court. It's very important that you do not yell at the court. If you yell at the court or scream or raise your voice, most likely the judge will stop listening to you. It's important that you speak in a regulated voice. You can, of course, emphasize important words, but don't scream, because it's really annoying and the judge will stop listening to you. Then another concern that I have is about doing your homework. You know you're going to court. Prepare your case. There is this neurotransmitter called dopamine, and whenever we're under stress, it triggers a fight or flight reflex. And this makes us really nervous. There's a reason they call it dopamine, because we turn to morons. This is why when you're a little kid and you see a cute girl or boy, you kind of forget your name. It's just because dopamine makes you nervous, makes you forgetful. So please do your homework. And here's a picture, hopefully if we can see this a little better, of someone doing their homework. Boy, that didn't show up too good. There we go, sorry about that. Examine your opening sentences. Assume the judge hasn't read any papers, because most of the time judges have got 50 cases on their dockets and they don't have a lot of time to prepare for the case. Even if you submitted courtesy copies in advance, they just might not have had the time to review them. Now just assume that the judge only has a few minutes to devote to your case. Start off with essentially a bumper sticker version of why you're in court, because you might not have the opportunity to say more. Try to rehearse in 3 sentences or less what you want. And let me give you, for example here. Your Honor, I'm Sally Sane. I'm here today on a complaint for breach of contract against Bill Bixby for shipping me a defective violin. I'm asking the court to award me $1,000 in damages, which is what I paid Mr. Bixby for the violin, plus court costs. There, 3 sentences, you're done. Very concise. Just take the opportunity to rehearse it several times in your head before you get to court. And the same thing if you're the defendant. If you're the defendant, feel free to say something along the lines within 3 sentences. Your Honor, my name is Bill Bixby. I deny liability because the damage to the violin was caused by Miss Sane herself when she left it in the hot car. I'm asking the court to dismiss the lawsuit against me. There. In 3 sentences, you've conveyed to the judge the entire essence of the dispute, who the parties are, and what you want the court to do. 3 sentences. Now, I like to refer to Sergeant Friday, and I'm showing my age here. Sergeant Friday was just the facts man. The judge needs to know who, what, where, when. So if the court asked you, when did you mail this? The response should be, Your Honor, I mailed it on Tuesday, or I mailed it on January 24th. So it's either a date or a day. But the response to the question when should be a date or a day. The response to who should be the name of a person. The response to the judge's question, where did you mail it, should be the name of a post office. Similarly, don't volunteer. If the judge doesn't ask you when did you mail it, you don't have to say I mailed it on Tuesday the 24th. You can just say I mailed it. I also like to tell my clients to observe the 3-second rule. By 3-second rule, I mean when someone asks you a question and you're thinking of what your answer is going to be, try to pause for 3 seconds, rehearse in your head what your answer is going to be before you say it out loud. This will allow your brain sufficient time to correct any silliness that might otherwise escape, especially when you might be sworn under penalties of perjury. This is kind of like an autocorrect button here. Finally, not really finally, another issue is, if you're winning, shut up. I know that sounds silly, but in a lot of cases when I'm before the court, if I'm winning, I might not have to say a thing. Sometimes the judge will ask the other side all the questions that I want to, and I don't even need to say a thing. So sometimes if people are winning and they start addressing the court, they might actually be sabotaging themselves because they don't know the law in this area. So my best advice is, if you're winning, be quiet. And also, argue your case. Don't argue with the judge. Don't say, Judge, you're stupid. Judge, you missed this. Instead say, Your Honor, you might have overlooked the fact that the defendant was speeding and the posted speed limit was 20 and they were going 30. Don't say, Judge, you didn't look at the speed limit. There's a way to say it and a way not to say it. And again, you're here on listening to Green Slate I, and this is a live interactive show. Feel free to call in at the number on your screen, 312-738-1060. And along the lines of doing your homework is, don't hand papers to the court. If you want the judge to look at your certificate of insurance, make sure that you show it to the other side, whether it's the other attorney or the state's attorney or the public defender. They need to see it first. And then, only then, can you ask the court to show it to the court. And the court has to say, yes, I will see it. And the court will also ask the other side if they have any objections to the court looking at it. So don't just start handing documents to the court, because there is a certain formality we need to follow when the court wants to look at documents. And last but not least, I wanted to address the saying goodbye, not to you, my audience, but goodbye to the court. There's a way to leave the courtroom. Let's suppose you lose. You're not successful in your case and the judge enters a verdict against you. Let's suppose the judge sentences you to community service. Bad things happen even to good people. If and when this happens, do not stamp out of the courtroom. Do not start yelling in the courtroom, oh, the judge is an idiot. Do not start threatening the judiciary. Do not start threatening to blow up the courthouse. Do not start threatening to appeal. Just leave the courtroom. I have personally seen my client, believe it or not, she was on her way out of the courtroom and her bag got tied up on the bar. Believe it or not, there's a reason why we call attorneys members of the bar. And that's because the well of the court where the benches are in front of the judge and the clerk and the sheriff, there's usually a bar that prohibits the public from accessing that area. Now, when my client was leaving the courtroom, her purse accidentally got hung up on that bar, and she stumbled. And she kind of yanked her purse because it was hung up on the bar there. And it looked as though, and then it made a huge commotion when this woman was staggering and struggling with the bar. It made quite a commotion in the courtroom, and the judge thought she was having essentially a hissy fit because the ruling was against her. Believe it or not, I saw the judge order her back into the courtroom and have the court hold her in contempt of court, which it can be a criminal sanction. Sometimes contempt of court is criminal, sometimes it's civil. But in this case, it was direct contempt because the lady had shown essentially what the judge thought she had been disrespectful to the court, even though it was just a matter of her purse getting caught up on the bar. So you need to be very careful when you leave the courtroom. And so don't leave the courtroom quickly, but don't dawdle in front of the judge. I've also seen, matter of fact, it was this morning in court. The judge had already ruled, and the attorneys for both parties had stepped away from the bench. And for whatever reason, the wife continued to address the court. And she suggested that the judge was wrong in his ruling, and the judge kind of got miffed at this lady. And the judge ordered the sheriff to come out, and that's always a concern. You don't want the judge to have a negative impression of you or your case. So you need to act appropriately with courtroom etiquette. And again, I'm Jan Kowalski, and I'm here on behalf of Green Slate I, and this is goodbye for tonight. And I'll be joining you again next Tuesday from 7 to 7:25. And hopefully next Tuesday we're going to have someone joining us from the John Marshall Law School, the Fair Housing Clinic, to explain the services that they offer. And again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.